Hello and welcome to Crochet with Diane. Today's video is a wonderfully easy, very beginner friendly, step-by-step tutorial on how to crochet this beautiful little summer shrug. It's a great summer accessory that you can throw over your shoulders to style up a dress, or if you want to just cover up your arms. As you can see, the design is quite simple and elegant with these lovely little puff stitches which look like cute little flowers. This video shows the small to medium size, but take a look in the description where I've added some different size options. Just before we get into the video, I want to say a big thank you for everyone that's subscribed to my channel so far. We're certainly building a lovely little community of crocheters and I'm so grateful. I love all your comments and questions, so please keep them coming. Okay, let's get on to the crochet tutorial. So to make this shrug, you'll need your cotton yarn, and we are using a 4.5mm crochet hook size, plenty of stitch markers, tape measure, a darning needle and some scissors. Now this cotton yarn I found this on Amazon at a very good price. It's from Utopia Crafts and it's recycled cotton. It's a light category 3 weight or a light DK weight yarn, and I'll put a link in the description for you where you can find it on Amazon. Okay, let's get started. So as you can see, we're going to be working in rows, and I'm going to show you from the foundation chain, and we're going to work up, and I'll show you how to add these lovely little embellishments of puff stitches. So to start, make your slip knot, and our foundation chain is going to be in multiples of 4, and I'm going to do 140 chains plus 6 at the end just for the foundation chain turning chain. So yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through. So there's your chain stitch, and you keep going with your chain stitch until you have 140 chains. So you can pause the video here and make your foundation chain, and I will meet you ready for row 1. Okay, so I have just done a smaller swatch of 60 chains just so that I can show you the stitch pattern, but you should have 140 chains on your foundation chain. So now what we do is we add 6 more chains. Okay, so row 1, we're going to place a double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook. So I'm using US crochet terminology. So for a double crochet, we yarn over and count back. Don't count the loop that's on the hook. Count 1, 2, 3, and 4. Put your hook in, yarn over and pull through a loop. You've got 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Then you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over again and then pull through both of those loops. And that's a double crochet in a US terminology. Now we're going to create a V-stitch, and to do this we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to place a double crochet right into the very same stitch that we've just worked here. So yarn over and make another double crochet stitch. Okay, so here we've got our turning chain and we've made a V-stitch. So now the repeat stitch along row 1 is we now chain 1 and then we skip 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th we make a double crochet. So yarn over, hook in and make a double crochet stitch. And then chain 2 and make another double crochet stitch into the same stitch we've just worked. We're creating another V-stitch. Okay, then chain 1 and then skip 3. So just make sure you're not counting the one you've just worked. We count 1, 2, and 3. And in the 4th chain, at the 4th stitch, we're going to make another V-stitch, which is a double crochet, chain 2, and then a double crochet into the same stitch. And after every V-stitch we chain 1. So we were going to repeat this, placing a V-stitch, our V-stitches all the way along the foundation chain. So yarn over, skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th make your next V-stitch, which is a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet into that same stitch. And then don't forget to chain one in between every V-stitch. Okay, so repeat that all the way along your foundation chain, and I will meet you as we're approaching the end of row 1. So here we are at the end of, or coming up to the end of row 1, and you should have 2 chains here at the end. So we chain 1 like normal, and to finish row 1 simply place 1 double crochet into the last stitch. So skip 1 stitch and then double crochet into that last stitch. Okay, so there's row 1. Okay, row 2, which is the repeat row for the majority of this shrug, apart from the rows where we add these little puff stitches. So row 2, chain 4, and turn your work. Okay, and quite simply we're going to place another our V-stitches into the V-stitch from the row below. So yarn over, put your hook into that chain 2 space, so into the middle of the V-stitch, put your hook right through there, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then finish your double crochet, and then chain 2, and then complete your V-stitch by placing another double crochet into the same space. So yarn over, put your hook back into that same space and make another double crochet. Okay, and you can see the V-stitches sitting on top of each other. So then they repeat just like we did row 1. Chain 1, and then hop over to your next V-stitch, yarn over and make your next V-stitch, which is a double crochet, chain 2, and then a double crochet into the same space. And the same as row 1, we always chain 1 in between the V-stitches. Okay, so I'll just show you one more time. Yarn over, hop over, straight over to your next V-stitch from the row below, and make your next V-stitch. Chain 2, and then a double crochet in the same space. Okay, so continue along row 2, placing V-stitch in each and every one from row 1 all the way across till the end, and don't forget to do your chain 1 in between each V-stitch. And I'll meet you as you're approaching the end of row 2. So here we are approaching the end of row 2, and you'll see I've put our last V-stitch in there. So chain 1, and to finish row 2 we skip 1 chain of the turning chain and place a double crochet into the next. So yarn over, skip this next stitch here, and into here place the next one, place a double crochet. And that is how you finish each and every repeat row of the V-stitches. Okay, so you have 2 rows of your V-stitches. I'll just bring this in so you can see. We're doing 4 rows of row 2 V-stitches, and these puff stitches are every 5th row. Okay, so what you need to do now is go ahead and make another 2 rows of repeating row 2. Okay, you can rewind the video just to refresh your memory on how to do row 2, but you need in total at this point 4 rows of just the plain V-stitch. So go ahead now, make 2 more rows of repeating row 2, and I will meet you back here at the end of row 4. So here we are at the end of row 4, and we're now going to go on to row 5, which is a row where we're adding in these puff stitches, and they are placed. Now if you look at your work, you can visibly count your V-stitches, and on row 5 they are every 6th V-stitch is going to be a puff V-stitch. Okay, now there is a nice sort of simple way, the way I did this, because obviously this whole thing is a lot longer than the sample I'm showing you here. This is where the stitch markers will be coming in handy if you want to do it this way. So let's move that out of the way for a second. We'll start row 5 in the same way by chaining 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then turn your work. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to do 5 5 V-stitches, and then every 6th V-stitch is going to be a puff V-stitch all the way along. So what I did when I was making this full-size version is I got to this row and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and popped in a stitch marker, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and popped in a stitch marker. And obviously yours is going to be a lot longer than that. You carry on doing that all the way along the row so that you know when you get to the stitch marker it's going to be a puff V-stitch. So we've chain 4, turned our work. So for the first 5 V-stitches, it's going to be a regular V-stitch as normal. There, so you have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 V-stitches, and the next one has the stitch marker in. So we'll take that out and we're going to make a puff V-stitch. Okay, so for a puff V-stitch, we yarn over, put the hook into that next V-stitch, grab your yarn and pull up a loop. And we're going to do that 5 times. So that's 1, then yarn over, hook in again, pull up another loop, that's 2, yarn over, hook in again, pull up another loop, that's 3, yarn over, hook in again, pull up another loop, 4, yarn over, hook in again, pull up another loop, that's 5. And when you pull the loops up, kind of pull them up nice and loose and long. Then you yarn over and pull through all of the loops on your hook. You might have to wiggle it through a little bit. And then chain 2. 1, 2. So it's a V-stitch, but the stitch is a puff stitch, not a double crochet. And again, into the same space, we do this same thing again. So yarn over 5 times. So yarn over, hook in, pull up a loop, pull it up nice and tall, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 and 5. Okay, then yarn over and wiggle your hook through all of those loops on your hook, and again chain 2, which is the chain 1 we do to close the puff stitch, and then the chain 1 in between your V-stitches. And then we're back onto your regular V-stitch again, all the way up to your stitch marker. So you've done your chain 1, yarn over, and then just start again with your regular V-stitches for the next 5 V-stitches. Okay, so continue like that for the next 5 V-stitches, and where your stitch marker is, place your puff V-stitch, and repeat this all the way along, and I will meet you at the end of row 5 just to show you how to finish row 5 and start row 6. So here we are approaching the end of row 5, and on this small sample that I've done, there is only 2 puff V-stitches. You'll have obviously a lot more going along your row. And to finish the row, in the same way as all the other rows, we simply place a double, skip 1 stitch, place a double crochet into that corner stitch. Okay, so if we take a look at this here, you can see that we're doing 2 rows of the puff V stitches, which gives a beautiful little kind of flower effect. So for row 5 and 6 are the puff V stitch rows. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful. Okay, so for row 6, chain 4, and turn your work, and nice easy row here, because we don't need to use our stitch markers, because we're going to put our puff V stitch in just on top of the puff V stitch from the row below. So we start off with, now obviously this is at the end of this row, there is only 4 V stitches. You might have a different number, so that's okay, as long as there's 5 in between, as many as you can fit in the row is basically what we're doing. So anyway, so row 6, we start by doing our V stitches as we have been doing. So we do a V stitches into the V stitches from the row below, all the way until you reach that puff V-stitch from the row below. So carry on. I'll pause the recording and I'll show you when we get to there. Okay, so we've reached our next V-stitch will be the puff V-stitch, and we're going to place it into this chain space in between these two puff stitches here. So we've done a V-stitch here and chain one, and then yarn over, place your hook into this chain space here and make your first puff stitch. So that's yarn over and pull through the loop 5 times. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Yarn over and then pull through. I find if I wiggle the crochet hook a little bit, it comes through easier. Pull through all of those loops, then you chain one to close the puff stitch, and then another chain ready for the next puff stitch. So put in the next one straight in the same space. So yarn over 5 times. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Remembering to keep these as tall and as loose as you can. It's easier to pull the hook through. So then yarn over and wiggle your hook through all of those loops there. Chain 1 and 2. And then carry on. Carry on now with your regular V-stitch. All the way along until you get to your next puff V-stitch sitting in the row below, and do the same again. So repeat that all the way along row 6. You can pause the video here, work your way all the way along, and I'll meet you at the end of this row. There we go. So there's row 6 all finished with your puff V-stitches, creating the little flower effect. Okay, let me just show you the next part. So as you can see, these they're not directly on top of each other. They're staggered slightly, and I want to show you there's a really easy way to do this so they're nicely kind of staggered quite evenly, if you see there. The next thing you need to do is in between each of these puff V-stitch rows is 4 rows of just the straightforward V-stitches, which is row 2. So go ahead now and do crochet 4 rows of repeating row 2, which is these 4 here, straightforward V-stitch rows with no puff V-stitches. Pause the video here and I will meet you back here to show you a nice easy way to get these staggered nice and evenly. Okay, so 4 more rows of repeating row 2. I just wanted to quickly show you, just realised I haven't shown you this, on your first row of 4 rows, repeating row 2, when you come up to your puff V-stitch, quite simply work your V-stitch into this chain 2 space. I just thought I would just show you that if you weren't sure. So yarn over and then hook into that chain 2 space there and make a double crochet, and then chain 2 and into that same space your next double crochet of the V-stitch. Okay, and that's how you just work across your puff V-stitch, and of course you chain 1 and then carry on, and the same into all of your puff V-stitches. Just work a simple V-stitch into that chain space just there. Okay, after you've done 4 more rows of repeating row 2, we are on to row 11 and 12 of the puff V-stitch rows, and we're going to be staggering where the placement of these so that they are in between, not directly on top. Now, the easiest way to do this is bring in your stitch markers again, and I've already done the chain 4 and turned my work facing the way we're going to be working. So for row 11, count 3 V stitches in, so 1, 2, 3, and place a stitch marker, and then you'll find that this puff stitch here is 3 V stitches along, 1, 2, 3. So from this V stitch, count 3, 1, 2, 3, and place your stitch marker. And then find your next puff stitch, and from this V stitch count 3, 1, 2, 3, and place your stitch marker, and do that all the way along until the end of the row. So, and the stitch markers is where you're going to place your puff V stitch. So for row 11, we're going to place a V-stitch in here and a V-stitch in here and a puff V-stitch in here. So I'll just quickly do these two. So we've done the first 2 V stitches and the next one is the stitch marker, and so we place in our puff V stitch exactly the same as before. So you yarn over and pull up a loop and then do this 5 times. And then yarn over, wiggle your hook through all those loops, chain 2, and then in the same space put in another puff stitch. Then chain 2, and then carry on with your regular V stitches until your next stitch marker, and then place a puff V stitch in where the stitch marker is. So continue all the way along, and I'll meet you at the end of row 11. Okay, so I'm just coming up to the end of row 11, and you can see they've spaced out nice and symmetrically. So just finish off row 11 with a double crochet, and then chain 4, oh, that one's been a bit tricky, 2, 3, 4, and then turn your work and row 12, quite simply, you'll work your way back across the row, putting in your V-stitch where you see a V-stitch and a puff V-stitch where you see a puff V-stitch, which completes your 2 rows of excuse me, I'm getting croaky now, which completes, you know, your 2 rows of the puff V-stitch rows. Okay, so make your way across row 12 and I will meet you at the end of this row. Okay, so there is the end. We're at the end of row 12, and as you can see, it has spaced out these little puff V-stitch rows, nice and symmetrically. So your pattern repeat is rows 1 to 12, and you need to do that another 2 times, and then we end with 4 rows of the V-stitch rows. So there's 40 rows in total. So this is the first 12. Repeat 1 to 12 twice more. I'll just bring in the finished rectangle. You know how shrugs are just one great big rectangle, and then we fold it over and sew up for the sleeves. So you can see here, so with this is actually 40 rows, and this is the end. Here is the end of row, the third lot of 1 to 12 here, and then around the neckline and the bottom, I didn't want to do the puff stitches, so I just ended up with 4 rows of the repeat of row 2, which is just your straightforward V-stitch. So hopefully that will help you to make this, and what you'll have at the end of it is this great big rectangle, and I will just measure it. I'll give you the measurements of this. So for being a summer shrug, it's shorter. It sits just on at the waist, and so it's approximately 21 inches wide. So from the neck down, that's how long it will sit. And the length, so the length is how long the sleeves will be. And this is a small to medium size, and this is approximately 38 inches. So if you're making a larger size, you will want to make it longer, but I'll put a link in the description for the different numbers of the foundation chain. Okay, so carry on. Make your 40 rows of repeating rows 1 to 12, 3 times in total, and then finish with 4 rows of just your V-stitch at the top. And then I will meet you when you've done that, just to quickly show you how it's folded in the normal way we do a shrug, but if you want to meet me back here, and we'll just go quickly over that. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, so after 40 rows, this is what your work should look like. And you have one great big rectangle piece of material with your beautiful puff stitch embellishments. Okay, so if you've not seen how a shrug is assembled before, quite simply we lay it out flat on a nice flat surface, nice and square, and make sure you've got the top at the top, and then quite simply grab the top two corners and fold the whole thing in half. Okay, and here's, I can't quite get it all on. If I squeeze it in the middle here, you can see both ends what I'm doing here. Now what we need to do is grab your stitch markers and pin the bottom, the corner of the top piece with the very corner of the bottom. Okay, and the same the other side. Just line it up. So you've got this corner here and this corner here. I'll put a little stitch marker in just to hold it in place. Okay, so, and as this is quite a short shrug, we're not going to sew up, we're not going to join up very far up the sleeves. And I think around approximately 3 inches probably will be fine. So let's just see where. So 3 inches comes to here. So this will be the opening for your arm. So pop in. You can, you know, if you want it the arm opening smaller, just measure further up. But I'm doing this one 3 inches up, and then I'm putting in a stitch marker, and that's where we want to just sew up that little bit there. And again, measure 3 inches this way, and pop your stitch marker in, and make sure that it's even with this side. And I've counted the stitches up, and it's the same amount of stitches. So what we do now, and this here, this is your shrug. Okay, so all we're going to do now is sew using a slip stitch from here to here. So I'm just going to start with one of the sleeves here. You can take out your stitch marker and attach some yarn, either by making a slip knot, or you can actually just tie it on. So get the corner stitch on the inside leg of the stitch. So you've got, when you look at the stitch, you've got the outside and the inside, or the front loop and the back loop. So I'm going to go into the back loop of the corner stitch. Okay, and then find your corresponding corner stitch on the other side of this where we're sewing and put it in the loop that's facing you, so they're both on the inside loops. Okay, then attach your slip knot over your hook, pull that up nice and tight. Okay, and then just pull that through. Okay, and then chain 1. So I'm just going to move this out of the way because you can't see it against the background of the cream. So quite simply, we are going to slip stitch up to our stitch marker. So find your next stitch on this side of the panel. Put your hook through. Find the corresponding stitch, or approximately as best you can, because this is not these aren't actual stitches, they're the side of the stitches. Then hook through that side, yarn over, pull through, and then pull through again. Okay, so we'll just keep going. Making our slip stitches all the way up to our stitch marker. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry about the seam. We'll be turning the whole thing the right way around or inside out when it's finished. So this seam will be on the inside. Okay, so that's your slip stitch. So just work your way up to your stitch marker. And when you've got to your stitch marker, just finish off and tie in your ends, and then do exactly the same on the other side. Okay, so I've finished sewing the sleeves together on both sides. So all we need to do now is turn the whole thing the right way up so that the seams are on the inside. There we go. Now obviously you need to spend a few minutes just weaving in the ends, but basically that is how you crochet your beautiful little summer shrug. Now if you wanted to, you could now add a border around, all the way around here, of it may be a single crochet or a half double crochet. It's entirely up to you. I think it looks really pretty with just the ends of these V-stitches, but you can put a little border around the opening for your arms as well on the sleeves. But that's basically it. So that is how you make your summer shrug.